because now it's been like probably 2 weeks since I've seen it, maybe.
Mhm.
I was like, and maybe take notes. So, and I was like, you'll probably write down like 5 words, and she has pages.
Hello.
Welcome to Inner Archaeology.
Welcome to Inner Archaeology.
Welcome to Inner Archaeology. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Emily, and we're so glad you're tuning in. Wherever you're listening from, you can listen to audio versions of this podcast, video versions. You can check us out, all the different ways to stream us at innerarchaeology.tv.
.tv is for visual, and .com is for all of the others.
All audio. Of the others. And we're also on Patreon and patreon.com/innerarchaeology. And those are the things.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited. Let's talk about Stutz.
Yeah. So the last episode, we Sarah had mentioned this documentary that's on Netflix, was recently released, and it was directed and produced by Jonah Hill. And the whole documentary features Jonah Hill's therapist, Phil, I think, Stutz. And I think his name's Phil. That seems right to me. That feels right. I'm sorry if that's not right. And so Sarah's like, you got to watch this documentary. So I did. And now we want to chat a bit about like some of the things that were uncovered, because a lot of it's very in alignment with a bunch of the stuff that we gravitate towards talking about.
It's funny because I would have never watched it because I don't know, I'm not the biggest Jonah Hill fan. I would have never watched it if I hadn't had so many people tell me I had to watch it. Like so many people were just like, Sarah, have you seen the Stutz documentary yet? And I was like, no, do I have to? And they were like, yes, you have to. You will like it. It's like right up your alley. And then it was funny because I was like, wait, Emily, watch it the day before we record so that it'll be fresh in your mind, because now it's been like probably 2 weeks since I've seen it, maybe. And I was like, maybe take notes. So, and I was like, you'll probably write down like 5 words. And she has pages. She was like, I brought my notes, and she showed them to me. It's like pages and pages of notes. Yes. And I was like, who did I think I was talking to? Oh, you'll probably have like 5 bullet points.
Not me.
So take it away, because I feel like you are going to remember, your memory is going to be fresher. But I definitely had moments where I was like, oh, fuck yeah. So
yeah, there were some really good things, and I really loved how his like method brought in a lot of like themes that I love working with, that we love talking about. But then there were like a few new things that I was like, ooh, this is a really interesting way, and very felt very unconventional, like for a therapist. I mean, everything about this man was very unconventional and not what you, I think, typically think a conversation with a therapist would be like. Like he constantly is like busting Jonah Hill's balls, and like like they've got this like weird, this funny like humor centric banter. And part of me, like just seeing their relationship, a big takeaway was just like you like find the right people, like you attract the right people, because they communicated on a level of like using humor to manage their pain, and they both did that. And so they both spoke this language, which is why I think they love each other so much, or a component of it, of why they're so attracted and they love each other so much. And anyway, so I guess like the big overarching, it made me feel like we can give ourselves permission. I know I already used the word unconventional, but we can give ourselves permission to be creative in like whatever it is that is our work that we do. And I felt like that was just for me, like watching this man and watching their interaction, it was kind of just like, this man literally just paved his own way in the therapy world and created these like ideas that are incredibly powerful, and they're going to be just right for the people that they're just right for, you know? So, one of the big ones, I guess, that I would love to like maybe unpack a little bit more with you is the one that you mentioned in the last episode. And it was the triangle. It was the life force triangle that he talked about.
I loved that.
And it's so good because not only did he give you like a visual, but also just made it like really simple, made a simple path during a time that you feel absolutely directionless. And so I guess to just break that down, this tool is called, he called it like activating your life force. And he drew a triangle. And we kind of chatted about this last week, but at the bottom of the triangle was your relationship with your body. The center, like level of the pyramid was your relationship with other people, and then the top of the pyramid is your relationship with yourself. And the whole idea is that if you feel like you have no sense of direction, you don't know what is next, you feel stuck, you feel lost, you feel like disconnected from yourself, you don't know what to do, who you are, like the complete like powerlessness, I'm lost, I don't even know where, like how to move forward. Which all of us, we've all experienced that. And that's a terrifying place to be in. It feels very defeating. And a lot of times I think in that place of like desperation, we can do like shit that ultimately maybe it's like harmful for us, or that like out of like a panic, or you can be like crippled. I feel like I experience more of just being really crippled for like longer period of time than I would want. And so this whole idea is that your life force, which is your relationship with those three components, is the only thing that's really capable of guiding you. And that when you invest in your relationship with your body, you start there. You literally start with drinking water and moving your body. And I know it was interesting in the documentary, he said, for most people, just addressing your relationship with your body solves 85% of the issues that people are dealing with, which was like massive. And that just like it is such and it's something I identify with in a big way. And we've talked about that is, it's such like a, I don't know, a thematic struggle that people are having, is like just a complete disconnect from their body and their relationship with their body. Anyway, so I really, really like this concept that if you can cultivate your relationship with your body, with other people, just like connect with other people, and then start connecting to yourself, the things that bring you joy, and he said specifically through journaling, like connecting to your own subconscious, that just doing those things you will find direction within that. Like you just will find your direction. And I was just like, oh, that feels really great. Like to just have it broken down so cohesively into these three elements that just like do this, and that will be the answer, and you will start having direction and guidance in your life. And I thought that was like really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I really loved about it, like taking even a step back, because what he talks about also really early on is how he was just kind of frustrated with how long like traditional therapy takes. And so he didn't like that. He didn't like having people just, talking about things, not really giving them action items. And like that's been my experience too. Like I got to a point where I was just like, rehashing this stuff is like not helping me. Like like therapy for me, I mean, but I've been in more therapy than most people. Like we're talking like inpatient programs when you're in therapy from like 9 to 5. So I've been in an insane amount of therapy, and I just like got to the point in my life where I was like, this is like not helping. Like this just doesn't help anymore. Like it helps when you haven't done it, I think, and it helps when you have things that need to be addressed and acknowledged. But like if you've spent years and years and years and years doing that, you get to a point where you're like, this doesn't fucking do anything. And so for me, he really, I don't know, I guess just kind of like reinforced something that I've often emphasized, which is like sitting around and trying to figure it out in your brain isn't always the best. It's actually like doing things with your body, I also really love that he said like connecting to other people, and he was like seriously even going out to lunch with somebody that you like isn't your favorite person is like better than nothing. Like,
Mm.
because he's like, because that person is a representation of like your connection to like all of humanity. And I was like, fuck
Yes.
yeah, you know? And he's like, and
Mm-hmm.
it's true because we isolate. We do exactly the when we're depressed or struggling or directionless or feeling hopeless, we do the opposite of all those things. We stop feeding ourselves, we stop taking care of ourselves, we stop working out, we stop seeing people. We're definitely, I mean, maybe we're journaling, but you know, and it's just like, and he's like, I don't know, I just found it so refreshing for a therapist to be saying that instead of actually trying to like jump into the root cause and figuring out that thing through therapy and then hoping that that impacts everything else, like do the simple shit and
Mm.
do and take action and like take care
Mm.
of your body and eat a good meal and fucking move your body and drink water regularly and like that you're gonna
Yeah.
probably feel better because I actually think it is like kind of that simple, but I think we've kind of got it ass backwards honestly right
Mm.
now. um and I don't know, the only thing that showed me it was like backwards was going to so much therapy that I was like, this is doing nothing.
Yeah.
And why is there no action items? Like, I'm so sick of dwelling in my like fucking childhood. Like, I'm
Mm.
done. So I don't know. But yeah. So that for me was like the first part of like what he talked about, like what you just
Yeah.
said, that I was like, that is true. It's the action. It's like the action that like pulls you out. It's not
Mm.
the like figuring it out in your brain and then taking action.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I really, really believe that.
Yeah, there was this one part that I'm remembering where Jonah Hill in the conversation, he's saying, "Yeah, it's so weird because I want um the people in my life who are giving me advice are my friends, and my friends are idiots, and the people who are listening in my life are my therapists, and the person I want advice from is my therapist, and the people I want to listen are my friends." And I was like, that's so
Yes, I
interesting, you
love
know?
that.
Yeah. And I'm
It's so
thankful.
true.
Yeah. Like and I remember, I mean, the times I've been in therapy, I've encountered the same frustrations of just like and I've verbally asked, like, I want actionable steps. Like, I want you to give me like a practice. And some of them will, like I've like explicitly asked
Mhm.
for it, and I've experienced sometimes that they will, but I agree, there's so much more to mental health and like well-being in your soul, and it's not just this like brain thing. I'm actually reading a book on somatic trauma and healing
Mm.
it, and which is very interesting because that's very like body centric, and because I'm trying to like, I feel like I've spent a lot of time in my brain, and that's been like a big part of me trying to figure things out. But there is this like rumination component that only goes so far, and that you can only figure it
Mhm.
out so much just in the brain. And I'm feeling myself pulled to like other ways to like process through trauma and the things that you've experienced, and it's so interesting. So it's like so cool that this like the timing, I guess, of all of this, even just where what I'm like being drawn to in my life right now.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like the rumination, the like the thought processes, the trying to figure it out in your brain, like you're not, the thing that I've always found fault in that process and why I think it's just so limited is because when you do that and you're in a, even it like, I don't know, even if it's a little thing or if it's like a deep dark place, you have no new inputs.
Hmm.
You're just like stirring around a pot full of the same shit. You're
Hmm.
not like putting in new spices and new like ideas, and so it's just like, to me, I've just gotten to a place. I didn't always used to think this, but I've gotten to a place in my life where I'm like, if you don't have new inputs, like you're literally just going to get the same results, you're going to get the same
Hmm.
outcome.
Hmm.
And that's what, to me, like the problem with like just rumination in depression is. And I think that honestly, this realization and like so many of the realizations that I felt like Stutz was saying, I was like, yes, fuck, 100%. Like, I so agree. It took just like years of realizing that like nothing was changing without new inputs, you know?
Hmm. That makes so
Um,
much sense.
And I don't know. I just don't think it's emphasized enough. I think that we're like way behind in that area. And
Mm.
the problem is actually, I think, is that it gets confused for, the people who do come out into the world and have this type of philosophy about life. They take it to an extreme, right? They're the ones that are like, it's like that. I actually know nothing about that book, but the book that's like "Girl, Wash Your Face." I'm pretty sure,
Okay,
like
I've
that
heard
whole
of
thing.
this. Yeah,
I've
okay.
never read the book, but I've heard that basically it's like, I think, like toxic positivity, suck it up, pick your, like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, blah blah
Mhm.
blah. And there is a I think that's the problem, is like when people have this philosophy, they don't often come across as like Stutz does, you know what I mean, which is like more nuanced, more gentle is not really the word I want to use, but it's like the word that's coming to mind. But it's like the idea of acknowledging that action is more powerful without dismissing the importance of the processing and the emotional validation, and um yeah. And I just think that
Mhm.
like there's like one or the other, and in today's
Mm.
world, mostly that's mostly being highlighted, and it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why I liked it.
Yeah. I do think that there's like, I don't know, the thought that's coming to mind, like hearing you hash all that out is I wonder if there's just like a certain level that just a person sitting down in front of a therapist, just somebody doing that, it goes against so much conditioning, and old beliefs, just like a human
Mhm.
acknowledging and asking for help, and addressing all of the layers of like shame around like the shrink, needing a shrink or whatever, like all this like old school bullshit that our parents had to deal with in a big way. So there's still that out there. So just the amount that you overcome to just do that, like, and I guess like in this analogy, I'm thinking of like an adult doing this. And I know you were a child when you were like put into all this, but like sitting down and doing that, you overcome a lot anyways. And then there's like a layer of like just the act of like sharing your story and answering questions can serve such like a huge purpose. So I feel like this other form of therapy that we're talking about, this like talk therapy, very cognitive, is so potent and powerful in like certain areas, like of a person's journey. But there does get to, like what you're talking about, is there does get to be like a you don't get the return, like you outgrow it almost, and you need to move past, like you've done the big cracking open of like, I'm talking about my childhood and my pain, and I'm like saying the things, and I'm looking at it in the face, and then it's like, okay, now I see it, now what do I do about it?
Right.
Like, can I have
And
actionable steps about it?
that's another problem I've had with like therapy in general. And again, fucking therapy is amazing and everyone should be in it, I think. Like, I'm not anti-therapy. I just have been to so much therapy that I got to a point where I was like, what the fuck am I doing? It's so focused on the past that I just think it's limited,
Hmm.
like inherently. Because if you're only talking about the past, that's where you're stuck. Like, you're
Hmm.
stuck reliving the past. You're stuck, like, in some cases, reliving the pain and the harm of the past. And there's not a lot of conversation around, like, okay, you know this about yourself, blah, 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 like what you were just saying. But, what do you want in your future? Like, what do you want your, like, what do you want to, how do you want to feel like in the future? How do you want to show up despite all of this? What kind of person do you want to be? Nobody's
Hmm.
asking you that shit in therapy. They're not,
Hmm.
and I just think it keeps people stuck. So that's like, ugh, I just felt like it was such a breath of fresh air. Honestly, I was like,
Hmm.
yes.
Yeah, that
Um,
the whole thing was like, and honestly, like a lot of the tools, and I definitely highly highly recommend, if you're listening to this podcast, go watch the documentary. The tools are really powerful. I do think that they were kind of like branded in a unique way, but very similar to tools that we've talked about in this podcast already, um and just kind of like reworked in a different way or from a different vantage point, which was really interesting to me.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk about his like, I don't remember how he called it, but it was like it was kind of something that you were supposed to just like accept that there was what pain, endless work, and
Oh yeah.
confusion. Is
Those were
that what
the three they were like the three constants or something like that. Let me check
the
my
three
notes.
constants in life? And I
Yeah.
feel like
Oh, three aspects
it
of
made
reality. Sorry. Yeah.
three aspects of reality. Like these
Mhm.
are things that are always going to happen and you're never going to escape them and they're always going to be there to some extent, sometimes worse than others. And as soon as you can like accept these as like a aspect of reality, like the better your life is going to get. And that whole bit made me like laugh so hard. I was like laughing when he was like because he's like pain, confusion, and
Mhm.
constant work.
Mhm.
And it's just like most people I think would like hate to hear that. Like you're just like, ugh, no, I don't want life to be painful. I don't want life to be constant work. I don't want to be confused, right? These are all things you don't really want. Like nobody's like, woohoo, pain. But I do think like it just felt so true because I was like, man, if you can just accept that that's going to be part of your reality forever, which if I actually really feel like is what has happened for me over the last year in some ways is like just not trying to eliminate it or fight it, but just like trying to find the beauty in it and the
Mhm.
meaning in it. And
Mhm.
when you can do that, like you're not surprised or disappointed or frustrated all the time. You know, you're not like, ugh,
Yes.
fucking this day, this life, like what the fuck?
Yeah. Or like
FML.
my day is ruined
Like,
because I experienced one of these inevitable constants. Yeah.
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 Yes, and
Mm.
so I loved that too. I mean, I
Mhm.
really did. I was like, yeah.
I was like chewing on that, like thinking about, okay, like these are just, this is just part of reality, whether you're accepting it or fighting against it. It just is
Mm.
pain, uncertainty, constant work, which is so interesting because pain and uncertainty,
That
I
one
was
made
like,
me
yeah,
laugh.
but the constant
Yeah.
work was one that like surprised me too. And I'm also like, yeah, you know, I
Yeah.
do think though your relationship, when you start accepting those things, your relationship with them changes and it's reframed so that they're not these like terrible things. If you're used to a reality where you're fighting against it, and if one of these three components show up in your life, everything's ruined. Like, of course, like maybe the idea that these three things you just have to accept and they're always part of life seems pretty fucking depressing. But what I do think is when you start accepting it and you don't let those things like ruin your entire life, but instead you're like, oh yeah, pain showed up today because I'm human and
Yeah.
this is part of it.
Yes.
Your relationship with it changes, and it's actually not, pain isn't as painful, uncertainty isn't as scary, and constant work isn't
Mhm.
as hard because you've created a
Mhm.
relationship with those things and you're expecting them. You're not being constantly surprised by them, which it's like that's such
Mhm.
an interesting piece that I'm glad you brought that one up.
That one, yeah, I loved that one. And the constant work is surprising in it because I think nobody wants to like admit that. And also,
Yeah.
I think that's why, people have resistance to like personal development work, I think, because it just feels so hard, but it's like the right kind of hard. And when you're not like in it and you're not doing it, it can feel like, oh my gosh, this is so much work. But once you get to a point where you're like, wow, the rewards of this work is just like fucking making my life infinitely better. I would rather do like a harder life. You know what I mean? Choose this harder, quote unquote, life of constant work of like trying to improve than taking like what the easy way out where you're like checking out, like ruining everything around you, like destroying friendships and family. Like that's what it looks like for me. Like
Yeah.
checking out. Um and so, I don't know. There was just something like really refreshing about it to me. I
Mm.
was like, yeah,
Hmm.
dude, it's work. But like, I don't know. I
I
think
think
that
yeah.
acknowledging it is like I think we're like really I think as like a whole, most of us are really afraid to acknowledge that like that's just what like being a human is constant work.
I think that there's fear also that if we accept that these are components of reality, that means that there isn't joy and happiness and other things, because our brains are
Right.
so binary, and we think, oh, if there's pain, there can't be pleasure. If there's
Right.
uncertainty, there can't be trust, or there can't be
Right.
faith, or whatever. And if there's constant work, then there can't be like rest. And I think the thing is it's asking you to embrace the paradox that it's both and
Mm-hmm.
and really look at fear in the face, and give yourself permission to expand into the possibility that all the things can exist at the same time. This has been something that's been thematically coming up, not only in my life, but in my daughter's lives. And it's been, on one hand, really heartbreaking. And on another hand, I'm really like proud of them, but they're kind of, I mean, my children like went through a like global fucking pandemic, which was so like really, really rough on them, like being
Mm-hmm.
in school. And it was just this whole thing. And actually, on our Patreon, there's a whole episode where Evie like talks about like what that experience was like for her. It's like real cute, and so sweet. But anyway, I digress. So like my kids, right? They've gone through some shit. They've gone through that. Their parents got divorced in the middle of all of that. They had to move. Like their grandparents moved away in the middle of all. It was just like, oh my God, there was a window where they were like, everything's bad. And I'm like, I know it feels that
Mm-hmm.
way. Like, it makes sense. It feels that way. And I think through that, it really like launched them into realizing that there's pain and uncertainty and hard work in life, essentially in their own like little like elementary school way. They're realizing that life and reality is like painful. And it's been very interesting having these conversations with them, because as a mother, I inherently want to take their pain away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so sitting in their pain with them and saying, yeah, it does hurt sometimes. And I actually just recently, like just the other night, I sat with Evie while she was crying and expressing some pain she was experiencing, some emotional pain. And I pulled up that like wheel of emotions, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
look at this. And I was like, do you see in here, there's like what we would say, quote unquote, good emotions are. And then there's all these other emotions that are harder to experience. But I was like, guess what? All of this is what it is to be human. And if
Mm-hmm.
you only experienced happiness, you wouldn't really know you were happy, because you never experienced sadness. And her eyes were like
Mm-hmm.
getting big. And I was like, so what you're experiencing right now is just you're feeling what it's like to be human, and to fully enter into all of those feelings. And I think it was like a good moment for she, like, I saw her, she was like, Mom, I feel so much better, and she was
Mm-hmm.
just like, because I think she was accepting, she was having her own version of 11-year-old, accepting that pain is part of reality, and that it's okay. And I was like, it doesn't necessarily mean that anything's wrong. Maybe if there's like consistent pain going on, maybe you need to look at, there needs to be some boundaries, or something needs to change, or a habit needs to change. But if you're but it's like, that might not mean anything's like wrong or bad. It might just mean that you're human. And she was like so relieved. I think because she was experiencing pain and uncertainty, and she was afraid that there was something deeply, deeply wrong. And I think it was really relieving when
Mm-hmm.
she was like, oh, I'm just a human. Actually.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so amazing. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine what that would like, I don't know, do for a kid to hear something like that. You know what I
I
mean? That's
know.
not, because you just, that was not, nobody explained that to us.
No, I
I
was
don't think
just
our
like,
parents had any awareness of it, you know? It's like just
no,
so
yeah.
wild.
I know. I'm so glad. I mean, yeah, I hope it's like helpful. I'll hear about it, I'm sure, when they're teenagers, and like we'll figure out how all this was for them. But
In therapy.
in therapy, I mean, they're already in therapy, but yeah, more therapy, all
Yeah.
the therapy. Anyway, I think
So
all
much
that to
therapy.
say, like, this component of like acceptance of the full breadth of what it means to be human, instead of just picking and choosing where you get your dopamine hits. That's not all it is to be human.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
No, totally. And I think that I don't know, really like valuing that helps, like valuing, like I really some of my core values are like I want to be and value being like a dynamic, resilient like human. And I think that really helps with when you hear things like that, right? You're like, okay, I don't know. It's like I think it's probably just primal. It's just like, yeah, let's go to battle. We
Yeah.
got this.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
It's got like you got to channel that like survival energy somewhere, you know? It's so like much of who we are, but it doesn't really get to be exercised on a daily basis, not in the way that like our ancestors had to experience it. So,
yeah.
this is our survival, the survival of our species. Yeah, I love that. I would love maybe to talk more about tools, though. You want to do that next week?
Yeah, more tools.
The Stutz tools?
Because there's one, he talks about this string of pearls that I really liked. I think it was my favorite one out of the whole thing. Outside of the triangle, the life force one.
Me too.
I really like the string of pearls one, and I would love to chat about that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do tools next week.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about that. All right. Well, till next time, guys.
Yeah, tune in next week to hear us dig more into this documentary and go watch it. And so that you can...
I'm glad you took notes, actually, because I was like, wait, I need a list of these tools. Because it was like kind of a lot. Actually, it was also kind of a lot, like moving fast. I was like, wait a second.
You know? Yeah, they crammed a lot in.
I needed like a little pamphlet to come with it.
I know. A little PDF download, something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yay. Oh,
right.
It was good chatting with you. So till next time. Yeah.
Till next time. Bye.
Bye.